April 18th, 1945. The Harz Mountains, central Germany. The world has shrunk to the smell of pine needles and cold, damp earth. For 3 days, this has been the only reality for Anneliese, a 21-year-old Luftwaffe Helferin and auxiliary signals operator. The forest floor is a soft, treacherous carpet of decaying leaves that muffles every footstep, turning her small, retreating group into a column of ghosts. The air, thin and sharp at this altitude, carries 2 distinct sounds: the frantic chirping of birds, oblivious to the human catastrophe, and the distant, rhythmic thunder of American artillery. It's a sound that has become the monstrous heartbeat of their shrinking world, a percussive reminder that the end is not just coming, it is rolling over them like a tidal wave of steel. Anneliese clutches the thin wool of her greatcoat, a garment that now hangs on her like a shroud. She hasn't had a full meal in 2 weeks. The last of the hard bread, stale and gritty, was shared 3 days ago. Since then, it's been a gnawing, hollow emptiness in her stomach that has become a constant companion, a dull ache that has sharpened her other senses. She can smell the fear on the man in front of her, a sour stench of sweat mixed with the wet dog odor of his uniform. She can feel the tremor in her own hands, a fine, uncontrollable shaking that has less to do with the cold and more to do with the corrosive drip of adrenaline and exhaustion. Her uniform, once a source of pride, now feels like a costume for a play whose final, bloody act is about to begin. Underneath it, her body is a secret she keeps from the world. Her hips have become sharp points of bone. Her ribs are a cage you could count with your eyes closed. The officer leading them, a gaunt Oberleutnant with eyes that have seen too much and slept too little, had given them the final briefing 2 nights ago in the flickering lantern light of a hunter's cabin. His words were a cocktail of desperation and fanaticism. He spoke of the Americans, the Amis. He didn't call them soldiers. He called them gangsters, criminals scraped from the gutters of Chicago and New York, men without honor, without discipline. He described them as barbarians who took no prisoners, who saw cruelty as a sport. "They will not treat you like soldiers," he had hissed, his voice cracking. "For them, there is no Geneva Convention, especially for you women. To them, you are nothing but spoils of war. Weakness is a death sentence. Do not show them pain. Do not beg. Die with your honor intact." That poison now works its way through her veins. Every rumble of the approaching front line brings his words to life. The Chicago Gangsters. It's a vivid, terrifying image. She pictures men with cold eyes and cruel smiles, chewing on cigars as they chamber around in their Thompson submachine guns. The propaganda films had shown them, laughing as they looted, their faces devoid of mercy. Now, that fiction feels more real than the trees around her. The fear of capture is a separate, more intimate terror than the fear of a random shell. It's a fear of what comes after the fighting stops. The snap of a twig to their left freezes the entire column. 10 figures drop into the undergrowth, weapons raised. Anneliese fumbles with the small Mauser HSC pistol in her holster, a weapon she has never fired, its weight both a comfort and a burden. The forest is suddenly, unnaturally silent. The birds have stopped singing. The artillery has paused, as if taking a breath. And into that silence comes a new sound, the crunch of heavy boots on gravel, the clink of metal on metal, and a low murmur of voices. It's not German, it's English, a lazy, confident drawl that sounds utterly alien in this ancient German forest. The Oberleutnant makes a silent, frantic gesture, a slashing motion across his throat. No surrender. Fight to the last. But the will to fight has been hollowed out by hunger and hopelessness. The faces of the men around her are masks of pale, waxy resignation. The war is over, and they all know it. It ended for them days ago, somewhere on a muddy road under the shadow of a burning tank. This is just the epilogue. A voice, amplified by the quiet woods, cuts through the tension. "Come on out, it's over, hands up." It's calm, almost bored. Not the snarl of a gangster, but the weary command of a professional. For a long moment, nobody moves. You could measure the seconds and heartbeats. Then, a single soldier, a boy no older than Anneliese, with a face smudged with dirt and despair, slowly rises from the ferns, his rifle held high above his head. One by one, the others follow, a slow, rustling surrender. Anneliese gets to her feet, her legs shaking so violently she fears they will buckle. Her pistol feels like it weighs 100 pounds. She drops it to the ground and raises her hands, the rough fabric of her coat sleeve scratching against her cheeks. Through the trees, she sees them. Tall men in olive drab, their helmets covered in netting, and one bardance held at a casual but ready angle. Their faces are tired, unshaven, and utterly unreadable. The gangsters of Chicago have arrived, and Anneliese braces herself for the end.
The first American soldier who approaches her is huge, a mountain of a man with a square jaw and eyes the color of a washed-out summer sky. He moves with an economy of motion that speaks of long months at the front. He doesn't shout. He doesn't grin. He simply points at her, then at the ground in front of him. The command is unspoken but universal. She walks forward on unsteady legs, her eyes fixed on the patch on his shoulder, a red 1 on an olive shield. The 1st Infantry Division. The Big Red 1. She knows the name. They have been fighting since North Africa. These are not green troops. These are veterans, the hardest of the hard. He gestures for her to turn around. Her heart hammers against her ribs. This is it. The moment from the officer's warnings. A quick search, a shove, a bullet in the back of the head. She closes her eyes, a prayer forming on her lips. She feels his hands on her, surprisingly methodical and impersonal. They pat down her coat, her tunic, her boots. It's not violent or degrading. It's just a process, like a farmer checking livestock. He finds nothing. He grunts something to his comrade, a sound of mild disinterest, and moves on to the next person in line. Annalise opens her eyes, a wave of dizzying relief and confusion washing over her. There was no cruelty, no sneer, just a job being done. The prisoners are herded into a small clearing. The men are separated from the handful of women. Annalise stands with 3 other auxiliaries, all of them sharing the same wide-eyed, silent terror. They watch as the Americans collect their weapons into a pile. One of the GIs, a wiry sergeant with a pack of Lucky Strike cigarettes rolled into his helmet band, begins directing the process. He walks down the line of male prisoners, his eyes scanning each one. He stops in front of the Oberleutnant, who stands ramrod straight, his face a mask of defiant contempt. The sergeant looks him up and down, then his eyes fall on the officer's knight's cross hanging at his throat. He says something in English, then reaches out. For a second, it looks like he will rip it from the officer's neck. Instead, his fingers just tap the metal. He says one word, souvenir, with a wry, almost tired smile, and moves on without taking it. This small, baffling act of restraint is more disorienting than brutality would have been. Brutality was expected. It was the foundation of their fear. This casual, almost respectful professionalism doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't compute. They are disarmed, lined up, and counted. The process is efficient, detached. The GIs move with a weary confidence. You can see the war has scraped them down to the bone, just as it has the Germans. They are not the swaggering sadists of Goebbels' newsreels. They are exhausted men who just want this to be over. One of them lights a cigarette, the flare of the Zippo lighter unnaturally bright in the forest gloom. The smell of American tobacco, sweet and rich, drifts over to the prisoners, a scent from another world, a world without hunger and fear. After what feels like an eternity, a truck arrives, a big GMC CCKW, its engine rumbling and groaning as it navigates the rough forest track. The tailgate drops with a loud clang that makes them all flinch. "All right, ladies first," the sergeant says, gesturing with his rifle. The women are ordered to climb aboard. The truck bed is empty except for 2 long, hard wooden benches running along the sides. There is no cover, no comfort, just splintered, unforgiving planks of wood. Annalise uses the last of her strength to pull herself up, her worn boots slipping on the metal. She scrambles to the far end of the bench and presses herself into the corner, trying to make herself as small as possible. The other women follow, their faces pale and drawn. The male prisoners are loaded into a second truck. 2 armed guards climb into the back with them. One is the huge soldier from before. The other is a younger man, his face still holding a hint of Midwest farm boy. He looks almost as scared as they are. The big soldier, a staff sergeant by the stripes on his sleeve, takes a position near the tailgate, his Garand held across his lap. He doesn't look at them. He just stares out at the forest, his expression unreadable. The engine roars to life, the entire truck vibrating. The tailgate is slammed shut, plunging them into a world of jolting motion and swirling diesel fumes. The journey to the prisoner of war cage has begun. Annalise clenches her jaw as the truck hits its first bump, a jolt that travels from the hard wooden bench directly up her spine. A sharp electric pain shoots through her hips. She bites her lip to keep from crying out. The officer's words echo in her mind. Do not show them pain. Weakness is a death sentence.
The truck lurches and sways down the mountain path, its heavy-duty suspension no match for the deeply rutted track. Each jolt is a fresh agony. For a healthy person, it would be an uncomfortable ride. For Annalise, it is a meticulous, systematic form of torture. With every lurch, the sharp, unpadded bones of her pelvis grind against the unyielding wood of the bench. It's not a dull ache. It's a piercing, stabbing sensation, as if she were sitting on a bed of upturned knives. Her body, starved of the soft tissue that once cushioned it, has become its own instrument of pain. The uniform, which should offer some meager padding, is now just a coarse fabric chafing against her skeletal frame. She tries to shift her weight to find an angle that offers some relief, but there is none. Leaning forward puts a strain on her weakened back. Leaning back presses her spine against the truck's rattling metal side. She digs her fingernails into her palms, focusing on that smaller, more controllable pain. Around her, the other women are locked in the same silent misery. Their faces are tight masks of endurance, their bodies rigid. They are all disciples of the same brutal creed. Suffering must be invisible. To cry out, to show weakness, is to invite the contempt and cruelty they have been taught to expect. It is to confirm their captors' belief that they are pathetic and therefore disposable. The American sergeant sits by the tailgate, a silent, imposing silhouette against the passing landscape of shattered trees and shelled-out farmhouses. He seems completely indifferent to their presence. He chews on something, tobacco perhaps, and occasionally spits a brown stream of liquid onto the road. His gaze is distant, fixed on the horizon. He is the arbiter of their fate, a man who holds their lives in his hands, yet he seems utterly uninterested in them. Is this the gangster's cruelty? A cold, callous indifference that is somehow worse than active malice? Annalise watches him, her fear a cold knot in her stomach. His face is a topography of weariness, etched with lines that have nothing to do with age and everything to do with what he has seen. Is there any mercy in a face like that? An hour passes, then another. The jolting is relentless. The pain in her hips is no longer a series of sharp stabs. It has become a single screaming fire. Tears well up in her eyes, hot and stinging, but she refuses to let them fall. She blinks them back, focusing on the rhythmic sway of the truck, trying to lose herself in the motion. But the pain is too loud, too insistent. It's a voice screaming in her head, drowning out everything else. My bones, they feel like knives. The thought repeats itself, a desperate mantra. You have to say something. No, you can't. They will laugh. They will hit you. They will drag you from the truck. He will pull out his pistol and it will be over. Do not show pain. But the body has a will of its own, a breaking point that defies indoctrination. The pain becomes all-encompassing, a white-hot nova that eclipses fear, pride, and training. It radiates down her legs, up her spine. A low, involuntary whimper escapes her lips. It's barely audible above the truck's engine, but in the tense silence of the truck bed, it sounds like a shout. The woman next to her shoots her a look of pure terror. The younger guard glances over, his brow furrowed with a vague, uncertain concern. But the sergeant's head turns slowly, his gaze finally detaching from the horizon and settling on her. His eyes, which she had thought were cold and indifferent, are now focused directly on her. They are sharp, analytical. He is looking at her, really looking at her, for the first time. Annalise freezes. Her breath catches in her throat. She has broken the rule. She has shown weakness. She has drawn the attention of the gangster. Her entire body braces for the inevitable blow from a rifle butt, the curse, the shove toward the tailgate. This is the moment of truth, the point where the Oberleutnant's dark prophecies will either be fulfilled or proven false. Time seems to slow down. The rumble of the engine fades. The only thing in the world is the sergeant's unblinking stare and the agonizing throbbing pain that forced her to betray herself. She forces the words out, a barely audible whisper in broken schoolgirl English, the last plea of the condemned. Please, it hurts when I sit.
The surgeon's eyes narrow slightly. He doesn't move, doesn't speak. He just watches her, his expression a blank wall. Annalise's mind screams. She has sealed her fate. She has complained. She has become a problem. In the harsh calculus of war, problems are eliminated. The other women shrink away from her, as if her weakness is a contagion they might catch. The silence stretches, thick and heavy with dread. Her whispered confession hangs in the air, a fragile, pathetic thing. The surgeon's jaw works for a moment as he chews. Then he turns his head away from her and bellows, not at her, but toward the driver's cab. Hey, Adams, pull this thing over, now. The voice is a rough, gravelly bark. It's not angry, but it's full of an authority that brooks no argument. The truck's brakes squeal in protest, and the vehicle lurches to a halt on the shoulder of the road, sending a final, excruciating jolt through Annalise's body. The sudden silence is deafening, broken only by the idling engine and the distant cawing of a crow. This is it. They've stopped for her, to make an example of her. She squeezes her eyes shut, waiting for the hand to grab her collar, to drag her out onto the gravel. Instead, she hears the heavy thud of the sergeant's boots hitting the ground. The truck bed rocks as he jumps down. The tailgate remains closed. She opens her eyes. He is gone. What is happening? The younger guard looks just as confused, his knuckles white where he grips his rifle. The women exchange panicked, uncomprehending glances. Seconds crawl by like minutes. Then, the sergeant reappears at the side of the truck. He isn't holding a weapon. He's holding his own field jacket, a heavy, fleece-lined M1943 model, and 2 square, wax-coated cardboard boxes, K-rations. He tosses the jacket and the boxes over the side, and they land on the wooden bench with a soft thud. He says something to the young guard in rapid English. The guard, looking utterly bewildered, nods. Then, the sergeant looks directly at Annalise. He doesn't smile. His face is still a hard mask of exhaustion, but he points at her, then at the jacket and boxes. He makes a gesture, patting the bench. The meaning is unmistakable. It's a cushion. He wants her to use them as a cushion. Annalise stares, unable to process what is happening. This is impossible. This act of simple, profound kindness does not exist in the world she has been taught to fear. This is not the behavior of a Chicago gangster. Gangsters do not give their jackets to their prisoners. They do not use their own food rations to ease an enemy's pain. The woman next to her hesitantly reaches out and pushes the jacket toward her. It's heavy, smelling of damp wool, tobacco, and engine oil. The fleece lining is soft and worn. Annalise slowly, mechanically arranges the items. She folds the thick jacket in half and places the 2 sturdy ration boxes beneath it, creating a makeshift seat several inches high. The sergeant watches her, his expression unchanged, ensuring his silent command is obeyed. With trembling limbs, Annalise lowers herself onto the cushion. The relief is instantaneous and overwhelming. The sharp, stabbing pain is gone, replaced by a dull, manageable ache. The soft fleece and the height of the boxes lift her off the hard wood, cradling her emaciated frame. It's the most profound physical comfort she has felt in months. A choked sob escapes her throat, a sound of pure, unadulterated relief. It's so powerful, it's almost painful. She looks up at the sergeant, who is now climbing back into the truck. She wants to say thank you, Dankeschön, but the words are stuck in her throat, lost in a tidal wave of emotion she cannot name. He settles back into a spot by the tailgate, picks up his Garand, and bangs his fist on the side of the cab, the signal to move on. The engine roars back to life, and the convoy continues its journey. He doesn't look at her again. He resumes his watch over the passing countryside as if nothing has happened. But for Annalise, everything has happened. Her entire worldview, a structure built on years of carefully crafted fear and hatred, has just been shattered by the weight of a single folded jacket and 2 boxes of crackers. The physical pain in her bones has subsided, but it has been replaced by a new, disorienting ache, the pain of a cracking ideology. The journey continues, but the atmosphere inside the truck has been fundamentally altered. The air is no longer thick with raw animal fear. In its place is a quiet, stunned bewilderment. The women no longer stare at the floor or out at the blighted landscape. Their eyes keep darting from Annalise's makeshift cushion to the broad, silent back of the American sergeant. They are watching him, reevaluating him, trying to reconcile the monster of their imagination with the man of flesh and blood who just showed a moment of unexpected, almost paternal, compassion. Annalise sits on her cushion, the physical relief so complete it feels like a dream, but her mind is racing. The Oberleutnant's words, once so powerful, now seem like the ravings of a desperate man. The Chicago gangsters, the heartless criminals. It was all a lie designed to keep them fighting, to make them fear surrender more than death. And she had believed it. They had all believed it. She looks at the sergeant. Staff Sergeant Frank Miller, she would later learn his name was, a former steelworker from Youngstown, Ohio, drafted in '42, with a wife and a young son he hadn't seen in 2 years. A man who had fought his way through Sicily, Salerno, Anzio, and Normandy. A man who had every reason to hate the people in the uniform she wore. And yet, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a crumpled D-ration bar. He breaks off a piece of the dense, bitter chocolate, and, without looking at her, tosses it into her lap. It lands softly on her coat. Annalise stares at it. Food. A gift. Not thrown at her like scraps for a dog, but offered. She picks it up. Her hands are shaking again, but this time it isn't from fear. She breaks the small piece in half and offers a piece to the woman beside her. The woman takes it, her eyes wide with disbelief. Together they eat the chocolate, letting it melt slowly on their tongues. It's the first sweet thing they have tasted in months. It tastes like absolution. This single, quiet transaction is the true end of the war for Annalise. It isn't a ceasefire or a treaty signed by generals in a distant city. It is the collapse of a universe. The enemy, the faceless, monstrous Ami, has resolved into a human being, a tired, gruff man who shows kindness not because he has to, but because he chooses to. And in that moment, she is forced to see herself and her own people through a new lens. If they were wrong about the Americans, what else were they wrong about? The question is terrifying and liberating. It's the beginning of a long, painful journey out of the darkness. This scene, in countless variations, was playing out all across Germany in the spring of 1945. Millions of German soldiers and civilians, steeped in a decade of propaganda that portrayed their enemies as subhuman monsters, were now face to face with reality. They were discovering that the American GI was not a gangster, the British Tommy was not a colonial sadist, and the Soviet soldier, for all his ferocity in battle, was often just a young man from a farm in Ukraine, as brutalized by the war as they were. The grand, epic narrative of the Third Reich, with its glorious heroes and demonic villains, was crumbling into a million tiny, human interactions. It was dying in the shared cigarette, the offered ration, the simple act of a soldier giving his jacket to a prisoner because it hurt her when she sat. As the truck finally rolls into the makeshift prisoner of war camp, a sprawling city of tents and a muddy field, Annalise looks at the fleece-lined jacket that saved her. It is more than just a cushion. It is a relic, a symbol of the moment her world broke open and a sliver of light got in. The war had taken everything from her, her youth, her country, her innocence, and her faith. But in the back of a rattling American truck, a gruff sergeant from Ohio had given her something back, the startling, revolutionary, and ultimately healing realization that her enemy was, after all, a man.